This is the 2018 Toyota RAV4. It is a compact crossover built in Japan, and it's got great economy, good enough looks, and interesting technology. The model we're looking at today is the higher trim SE, and it goes for about $36,500. Though the RAV4 resembles pretty much every other crossover in this class, it actually gets pretty interesting when we start to look at the drivetrain. Now, up front is a traditional 2.5-liter gas engine, and it is mated to an electric motor. That's pretty normal. However, where things get weird is when we start to look at the all-wheel drive system. Where most manufacturers would put a drive shaft from the engine in the front to the rear wheels to provide all-wheel drive, Toyota has taken a different tack. Instead, they've put an electric motor in the back. That motor independently controls the two rear tires to provide all-wheel traction when it's needed. Now, this isn't an off-road rugged all-wheel drive system. You don't want to go rock crawling with this setup. And it's not just because of the light-duty configuration. The fact is, this RAV4, it has less ground clearance than a Corolla. So it's more likely you would probably want to take a Corolla off-roading before this thing. Now, I know what you're saying. This isn't the first company to do a dual motor setup in a hybrid. Why am I so excited? It's not because of what it is, but it's at the price point that you get it at, and the fact that it's completely normal here. The other options, you're looking at a Tesla P100D. Yeah, that's over $100,000. Or you could even be looking at an MDX hybrid. I mean, that starts over $50,000. This, $36,000 and change. So when you're talking a price point that low, it changes the game. Oh, I also want to give a shout out to Bollinger, who is making a dual motor electric off-roader, but you can't buy it yet, so I'm not counting it in. In terms of day-to-day utility, this RAV4 has up to 38.4 cubic feet of storage with the second row folded up. That's more than the Honda CR-V and more than the Subaru Forester. However, once you fold that second row down, the CR-V has more cargo capacity. Interior space is actually pretty good. I get a flip-down armrest. I also can adjust the angle of the seat, which is pretty nice. Although the downside with this setup is that there's no triggers in the back to lower the seat. You have to go in through the side, which is one step more than you have to do in the CR-V. Up front is a design that is clean and modern. You even get a surround camera view, which is pretty nifty. Look at that, 3D! Unfortunately, the rest of the infotainment system is barely passable. However, you do also get this really nifty little thing that actually shows what I was talking about. Engine, electric motor, and the second electric motor with the battery attached. Now, we should mention, like all Toyota hybrids, this vehicle does have an EV-only mode, which is completely useless. Once you jab the throttle even a little bit, it goes out of EV mode. If you go over 25 miles per hour, it's out of EV mode. Basically, it never, ever wants to stay in EV mode. So it's there, it's useless, just get past it. As are the Eco and Sport buttons. They don't really change the profile of this vehicle enough to really even bother messing with them, honestly. Now, as for the rest of the entertainment, it will integrate with a phone, but it doesn't do CarPlay or Android Auto. It simply does music, and then you can use Bluetooth if you want to do hands-free with your phone. On to the more interesting stuff. All of the Toyota RAV4s, starting in 2018, have Toyota Safety Sense as standard equipment. That means I get collision mitigation and adaptive cruise control as standard equipment. That's huge. Previously, that was only on real high-end vehicles, and then it came down to mid-range. Now, it's just a thing that Toyota does. And Toyota, keep in mind, is one of the largest car makers in the world. They sell 400,000 RAV4s every year. They sell almost 400,000 Camrys every year. They sell a lot of vehicles. So when they take a safety system like Toyota Safety Sense and put it on everything, that should make a significant impact in the number of collisions every year. That can only be a good thing. So if you've never used adaptive cruise control, like what comes standard on this vehicle, it's as simple as using a traditional cruise control system. You basically set your speed, But now we have a new button up here that sets the distance between the vehicle in front of you and yourself. It's very easy to use, and it is the best thing on road trips. Now, because this is the SE model, which is a higher end trim, it also has a couple extra goodies. I get blind spot monitoring to watch my blind spots, which actually may not be necessary on this vehicle because the visibility is actually quite good, but it's there just as a backup. And speaking of backup, rear view camera, standard on all Toyota vehicles, and it also supports rear cross traffic alert. Now, up front here, we have the standard Toyota gauge cluster. For the hybrids, it's always a Charge Eco Power gauge on the left. On the right, you have a standard speedo. In the middle, you have a multifunction display that is exactly like every other multifunction display Toyota does on their mainstream cars. Corolla, Camry. If you've seen those, you've seen this. It's the same. Our test car here came equipped with a lot of really nice little extras. We have like this leather wrapped steering wheel that actually feels really good. It's got some nice stitching in there. The gear shifter, it has a little piece of leather on a piece of cheap plastic, but you know, that's okay for the price range. And even have a handbrake here, which is, you just don't see that in modern cars quite so much anymore. I actually do like that, although most car makers are now going to a hydraulic brake. So the days are numbered on this one, I'm sure. And then we also have leather up here, and it even has some contrast stitching. Quality of the leather, it's not exactly the best, but it's kind of what you would expect at this price point. You even get leather on the dash. How many cars have a leather dash? Not a lot of them. They simply don't. So you might be asking yourself, why is the stitching orange? Well, I have a good story about that. Actually, I don't. I have no idea why it's orange. I think they just like had extra orange spools in the factory, and they're like, Bob, what color should we paint it? How about orange? Sounds good. So we have an orange interior now. There. Oh, and we also have carbon, I don't want to call that a carbon fiber faux because it doesn't actually look like carbon fiber, but it's a lacquered black plastic piece there. It kind of seems out of place, but I guess it's okay. It looks like it'll scratch a lot over time though. I mean, you dangle some keys on that, that's going to have a lot of scratching. Down here we have heated seats, high and low, and a USB interface. Oh, and big news! Dual climate controls. How exciting is that? Not very exciting. But it has them, so yay. So that's the interior. It's pretty straightforward. It has some interesting bits in a design that's actually pretty good. Now let's talk about the driving of this vehicle and its unusual drivetrain setup. Now, in terms of normal drivability, this all-wheel drive hybrid version is probably the most fun of all the RAV4s. And that's because it actually has more power than the other RAV4s. And there's something to be said about that all-wheel electric hybrid drivetrain start-stop at low speeds. So, though yes, the Eevee button is really a gimmick, the everyday drivability of the car, because it's a hybrid with that electric powertrain, is actually quite nice. Let's just be honest here. The RAV4 is popular because it has more cargo capacity than a car, but it drives exactly like a car. It's basically a modern version of that classic country squire wagon many of us grew up with. Although with all-wheel drive, seats that are actually comfortable, and air conditioning that actually works. Also, thanks to that hybrid drivetrain, this vehicle gets 34 miles to the gallon around town and 30 on the highway. That's because hybrid drivetrains are optimized for stop-and-go traffic, which is actually quite good for a vehicle of this size. In terms of competition, the list is actually pretty long. You have to consider the Honda CR-V, which is the second best-selling vehicle in this class. It is a little sportier, it has updated electronics, and it's generally, in my opinion, a better vehicle than the RAV4. However, if you want a hybrid, they don't have one in the US yet, so we're gonna have to wait on that. One of the other top-selling choices is, of course, the Nissan Rogue, and I really like the Rogue in general. However, when you look at the hybrid, it has less power than this car. It does have better economy on the freeway, but I think at a power loss that is a little more than I would be willing to make. Also, the interior of both the CR-V and this RAV4 are better than the Rogue. Now, let's talk about this all-wheel drive system. But first, I need to find some dirt. because I have a demonstration in mind. One way to test to see if this car actually has all-wheel drive starting at 0 is to stop it completely, put it in drive. We'll turn off traction control. And what I'll do is I'm going to floor it briefly, and we should see 4 tire marks. 3, 2, 1, and go. Okay, let's see what that did. Okay, what do we get that time?
Just front wheels.
Just the front wheels. So this is slippery, and yet the rear wheel, the rear wheel drive system didn't kick in. It was still predominantly front wheel drive. That's kind of a problem. I mean, why do you bother if even in slippery conditions like this, it doesn't do anything? Well, we're gonna kick it up a notch, and now we're gonna do a high-speed corner and see in the camera if both wheels overdrive on the outside or if it's really just the fronts carrying it through. Now I'm gonna go full throttle. I'm gonna try to get as much lock as possible. It's not the right way to corner, but it should show us what this all-wheel drive system does in terms of putting power from the front to the back. Okay, let's give this a shot. Here we go, and full throttle now. Okay, well, push is definitely a problem. I just went 50 feet off the course. Those rear wheels didn't do jack. Okay, that was just ridiculous. Clearly, this vehicle does not drive like an all-wheel drive vehicle. It didn't even when I was mid-slide, all-wheel drive did not kick in. Let's go take a look at this. Right here, we have the tire tracks. All I see are the 2 front wheels powering into oblivion. From the rear, nothing. Nothing. What's the point of this system? I mean, sure, maybe stop and go in very select conditions. And I have to say, when driving around town, I can feel it do the all-wheel drive system. I mean, that makes sense because when you're stopping and going in traffic, you can feel all 4 wheels doing the work. However, here on this pebbly, gravelly, actually rolly surface, this slick surface, it did that much. So I have an idea here. I think I know when the system works. So I've re-enabled traction control. I have eco mode on this time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try various levels of throttle. I think wide open throttle is what threw the system. So drive and full. Okay, so full throttle, definitely front wheel drive. I mean, I can feel that. I don't even need to get out of the vehicle. Okay, so now we're going to drive and I'm going to ease on the throttle, not just a little, but like 50%. We'll see what this does. Nope, that's still front wheel drive. Okay, now we're gonna do 25% of throttle. Yes, that felt all-wheel drive. What?
Nothing happened, what do you mean?
Because it was 4-wheel drive. I could feel it in here. It was only when the throttle is at 25%. So at a point where you're not likely to slip anyway is when it kicks in. So that means that like extremely slippery surfaces like snow or even like pea gravel, which is slipperier than this stuff, or even super slick wet streets after it hasn't rained for a while. That's the conditions where this will really be helpful. However, for 99% of the rest of the time, yeah, it's completely useless. And that kind of sucks, honestly. It kind of sucks because the concept here of dedicated motors is brilliant. I mean, that's the whole basis on which the Bollinger off-road electric car is built on. Conceptually, this is the future. However, their implementation is more about economy. It's the world we live in. So the RAV4 isn't really made for off-roading. First off, you have the wheels are too big, but also that electric motor in the back, it isn't really duty rated for the kind of power all the time that you need in an off-road situation. I actually really like this RAV4. If somebody were to give me one, I would certainly take it and I would drive it all the time. It's very easy to drive, it's super comfortable, and it has enough capability for day-to-day driving. It's not an off-road rig. It's not for anything more than going to the store, but that it does very, very well. It's really no wonder that this generation of RAV4 has been such a sales success for Toyota. In fact, they sell 400,000 of these every year. It's even outselling the Camry. With new tech and comfort, I'm sure this RAV4 is going to continue with its sales high. And that's my look at the 2018 Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. It's not a perfect crossover. Heck, it's barely a crossover. But if you need space, comfort, and all-wheel drive for safety's sake, you can't go wrong with the RAV4. For Driving Sports TV, I'm Ryan Douthit. Thanks for watching. If you were in the market for a crossover of this size, which would you get? The RAV4, the CR-V, or the Nissan Rogue? Maybe something else? Leave a comment and tell us what you're thinking. Also, be sure to give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. We'd love to know what you think of our videos.